What's up, YouTube? KS Gun Guy here. Thanks for joining me, and thanks as always for your continued support, the likes, the shares, the subscriptions. Really appreciate that. Definitely keeps the channel going. And I'm really excited today to bring you kind of a part two of the Canik TP9SF Elite and where I am with this gun. Did an unboxing video not too long ago and was very impressed with just how the gun looked and how it felt and that sort of thing, and the trigger pull, all that really good stuff. But there's been a lot of question going around, certainly on YouTube and other sites, about the reliability of the Canik, and one of my buddies, 1776 or Bust, certainly has had quite a saga with his. Now it's turned out okay for him, I think, but I'm sure he's still exploring where his Canik is and how it's performing. But I'm excited to bring you this part two and how mine is performing, because I've now been able to take this to the range twice. And I've put a little over, maybe 300, a little over 300 rounds through this, and I really wanted to focus especially on the first range visit with a variety of ammunition. So I've got in front of you some of the different ammunition, actually all of the ammunition types that I used just to experiment with the reliability, with the ejection patterns of this, and so what I used for this, and I'll be wheeling in shooting footage as much as I possibly can through this short part two, but I used Winchester White Box 115 grain. I know that the 115 grain ammunition has been one of the culprits for the Canik. Then I also used Winchester White Box 124 grain NATO ammo, because a lot of people have said that the 124 grain, the more NATO spec type of ammo, and you may question whether this is really NATO spec or not, but it is 124 grain, and how it performed. I also used some Hornady Critical Defense, which has been one of my chosen self-defense rounds, although I'm kind of moving away from that, and maybe I'll do a video on that at some point in time. And then Centerfire Shooting Sports, my local range, did donate a little bit of Critical Defense Light. This is actually 100 grain ammo, and so 100 grain FTX Critical Defense Light, if you're wondering. And the idea was really to try and capture as best that I could within the parameters of how I can record at centerfire the ejection patterns and how the gun performed. I was not focusing really on really shooting the gun in terms of accuracy or anything like that, although if you've seen my other videos, I'm not a terrifically accurate shooter to begin with. But I was really more concerned with just how does the gun function, or does it function at all? So I'm going to get this out of the way. This is a dummy round, just so you know, but it kind of helps stand up the gun a little bit. This gun tends to kind of tilt, and it doesn't look quite as good on camera. But as you can see, of course, it is unloaded. I do have the magazine with it. I just prefer to have a magazine in these for the sake of the video. But anyway, so let's take a look a little bit at some of the shooting and see how this does. I'll first wheel in some 115 grain Winchester White Box. All right, welcome back. So as you can see, the gun functioned just fine. Certainly didn't have any failures to feed, any failures to fire, anything like that. And the ejection pattern, for me, for my intents and purposes anyways, worked out very well. I like to see the ejected brass at least hit the metal wall or dividers between the shooting booths. So the 115 grain Winchester white box worked just fine. Let's take a look at the 124 grain Winchester white box. All right, welcome back. And so the 124 grain ammunition also performed just fine in the gun. Once again, no failures of any sort, and the ejection pattern really, I thought, and comparing it to some of the other videos, some of the other reviewers, it looked just fine to me. So let's take a look at the regular critical defense by Hornady. All right, and once again, the gun functioned just fine. Now, I only put 10 rounds of the Hornady because it's a little bit more expensive. But once again, I was really just looking to see if there was a consistent ejection pattern, and so I felt like 10 rounds. That's pretty good to at least make somewhat of a judgment, and also making sure that the ammunition itself function in the gun, and it did. So, last but not least, let's take a look at the critical defense light and see how it did. All right, welcome back again. So with the 100 grain critical defense light, it's a slightly different story with that. Now, I didn't get any brass back on me so much, but it didn't make an enthusiastic ejection, so to speak. But that's kind of to be expected with that type of ammunition. Actually, it's the first time I've ever shot the critical defense light, and the recoil really was amazingly soft. But again, the ejection was not quite as impressive. Did not hit the wall or the divider between the lanes. But again, the ammunition itself functioned just fine. And so overall, with the TP9SF Elite, it really did function just fine for me. I didn't have any issues in terms of, certainly critical issues as far as the ammunition feeding reliably or anything like that. And from an ejection standpoint, aside from the critical defense light, the ejection pattern was at least sufficient. It's hard to gauge, of course, if you're not at an outside range, to really be able to see down on the ground exactly where the rounds are ejecting, but you can get a pretty good idea at an indoor range, and at least as long as, again, for me, for my judging, it's hitting that wall pretty consistently and doing its job. So I've actually taken it twice to the range now. I may have said that before, but the second trip, and I'll be wheeling in a little bit of that footage as well, I was able to concentrate a little bit more on how the gun shoots. Now, a couple of things with this gun, and again, it is unloaded. There is a magazine in there. I'll take that out for now. I love the trigger on this gun. I think it's an absolutely fantastic trigger. I mean, it's very light and not a lot of resistance, although there is just a little bit. And then we get to that wall, and there's a nice, short, crisp break, and then the reset on it is fantastic. It's very audible, it's very tactile, and there's almost no distance between the reset and the wall again for your brake. So it's a very nice trigger. The one thing that I did notice, and again on the first trip I really was concentrating more on the ejection and the performance of the gun rather than any sort of accuracy whatsoever. I've noticed certainly on the first trip that this gun shot very high. So it definitely would require a 6 o'clock hold, or, and I don't have my phone with me to look through a viewfinder, so I'm not really going to be able to line this up very well on the camera, but the fiber optic, if you sit it at the very bottom of the U with your back sights, it does seem to line up a little bit better, and it's a little bit closer to point of aim, point of impact. And so the second trip, I was able to concentrate a little bit more on shooting, and it's not often I have a really good day at the range with a firearm. In fact, I took 3 different firearms for my second visit. I had a Colt Defender and my Springfield Range Officer 9mm, so radically different firearms to shoot at the range, and this was number 3 on the list. So walking into this, I was really kind of surprised at how well it shot, as long as I was concentrating again on making sure that fiber optic was really kind of buried in the back sight a little bit. But it shot very well, and it's a really fun shooter. Now, I would say from an ergonomic standpoint, it isn't necessarily the best ergonomics. Again, I certainly wouldn't put it on a level playing field with maybe a PPQ or a VP9, and of course, that's all opinion. Your mileage may vary on that. However, it is a pretty comfortable gun, and there's enough texture in the grip that it really, it seats well and it stays put where it needs to, and it's a reasonably soft shooting gun, or at least the 300 or so rounds that I put through it so far. I've got a lot more mileage to put on this gun, but so far I've been extremely impressed, and perhaps I got lucky and got a good one out of the box. It was hard to tell based upon the serial numbers and some of the things. 1776 Robust provided me some great information to look up when this particular gun was produced. But it still didn't necessarily tell me everything about is this one the right one as far as a recoil spring or anything like that. I just had to kind of take a little bit of a gamble. Thankfully, the gamble paid off, and so I really find this to be a fantastic gun to shoot. In fact, I don't think this will be a T&E gun and get rid of it anytime soon, like I do some of these guns that I wheel in and show you guys. This one may actually stay, and I've been very impressed. And again, I think it's a really good looking gun. I think it's almost kind of custom between the tungsten finish and the red dingus or safety lever on the trigger and the reasonably nice sights. Although I suppose they could be a little bit better. Time will tell. But again, so far it's been a lot of fun. It's been a good shooting gun at the range, and although I know some of these elites have had some issues for sure, we've all seen it. This one seems to be doing pretty well. So they're not all the same coming out of the box, which is nice. And you may already know that. You may already be a fan of this gun. If so, I can totally understand why. If you're on the fence about it, well, maybe this will help you a little bit. Anyways, thanks for joining me on this kind of part 2 of the Canik. I'm sure I'll have a couple of more videos and then start comparing this to some of the other compact size polymer guns that I've got in the collection, because you may be wondering about those. But I'd love to hear your comments on this. Let me know what you think. And if you've got some experience with these, of course, or again, if you're on the fence, if you've got some other questions, I'd love to answer them as best I can. And otherwise, again, thank you. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks.